The Liberator is one of my favorite dueling builds in Diablo 2, and today I'm going to show you my low-level dueling version of that build. A Liberator predominantly uses Blessed Hammer and Charge to deal damage to its opponents. Some people have variations of this build that they call the Paladin, because if you build it right, man, this build can do it all. So I'm gonna go over the stats, gear, build, and then I'm gonna jump into some duels and show you what this guy can do. Timestamps are down in the description if you wanted to jump around. If you really enjoy Diablo 2 PvP content, hit that subscribe button, follow me on Twitch, and let's dive into this. I absolutely love this character. It's one of the funnest that I've ever dueled with. The reason this character is so cool is because not only does he throw hammers, but he can also do a significant amount of damage by charging. He has the ability to use FOH on opponents, and this particular build can even use Zeal. So there's a lot of different angles that you can attack from with this guy. Statting this character will look much similar to a Hammerden at this level. That's how we're gonna be doing most of our damage. Our primary attack is gonna be hammers. If our opponent runs into the hammers, that's gonna be where they're gonna catch the most amount of damage typically. So in light of that, you'll see that I put as many points as I could into Blessed Hammer for the level. You won't be able to max it, unfortunately, because you won't be high enough of a level at level 30, but you can still put a decent amount of points into it. I then just put 1 point into everything else you see here. You will see that I have Zeal. That I did not put a point into. I actually, as you can see, have been granted it by an item. You don't necessarily need this skill for this build, but I love using this skill and surprising people with it in duels. It's super fun. In offensive auras, I put 1 point into Might just to get to Blessed Aim. I maxed Blessed Aim for its level. As you may know, it's a synergy for Blessed Hammer, so that just pumps up the damage that you do from there. I put a good number of points into Concentration. That's the aura that most Hammerdens use. That carries through at this level as well. It's a super effective aura to pump up the damage of your hammers. I also put 1 point into Fanaticism. Using the Fanaticism aura on this build actually allows me to hit the next breakpoint for Zeal. Otherwise, this guy would just be swinging super slow and it wouldn't even be worth it to use Zeal. As far as defensive auras go, you'll notice that I didn't put a single point into anything. I have been granted Vigor, but again, this is a skill that's been given to me by an item. So let's just go over to the items and I'll show you how I'm getting all of these random skills without putting any points into them. My regular gear is sort of budget. I use Honor Divine Scepter as my weapon. I use a Divine Scepter because it has a decent amount of damage on it for when I use charge on my opponents. This particular Divine Scepter also gave plus to Concentration, Blessed Hammer, and Zeal. And that's how you notice I got this skill over here without putting any points into it. Also, having that 107 damage, it doesn't seem like much, but in the low-level dueling world, that can be pretty significant when you charge at your opponent, especially if you have other items to bump up your max damage and enhanced damage. When I switch weapons, I have what they call an FOH Scepter, and that is because it gives me not only Fist of Heavens, but it gives me the Conviction aura as well. Having a weapon like that saves you from having to put points into all of these skills to get down to Fist of Heavens. Basically enables me to cast Fist of Heavens and hit my opponent with an entirely different skill. The shields are pretty similar on my first hand and second hand. They're both a 35% faster cast rate spirit. This one has a very terrible amount of resistances on the actual core crown shield that I made the spirit out of. And on the other side, it has 65 enhanced damage and 121 to attack rating on the base shield. The helm isn't anything too special. It's a +2 combat skills with 20% faster cast rate, and we obviously took it to Larzuk. We got 2 sockets, and I put perfect sapphires in this helm. Some low-level duelers choose to put perfect skulls. That helps you replenish life and regenerate mana. With this build, it's actually more important to have the mana to regenerate, because on our switch, you might have also noticed this item gives us +1 to meditation. That's an aura that we can use to regenerate our mana, but it regenerates by 1%. So it's super important to actually just have gems in your items that add to your mana. The amulet is pretty cool. It has +2 to combat skills, +10 faster cast rate, +3 to minimum damage, which is not dead on this character. And it also has +76 to mana. Mana is super important in low level dueling. Unlike in HLD, you're not allowed to use mana potions. So we have to rely on our mana that we have and our ability to regenerate it. My rings are just SOJs. I do have a string of ears for the belt. This is important for the damage reduction. There are a lot of characters all throughout low level dueling in Diablo 2 that do a lot of physical damage at level 30. The gloves are mage fists. This is the only option that you have under level 30 to have +20% faster cast rate on your gloves. It also has regenerate mana 25%, and as we've gone over, regenerating your mana is super important at this level. And this is where I'm getting my Vigor aura from, Tear Haunch Greaves. These are pretty standard boots for most low level dueling paladins. They have 20% faster run walk, +2 to vigor. That helps paladins desync and just helps you cruise across the map a lot faster. The stat points in strength and dexterity are definitely nice. And then of course, all resistances +10, that helps as well. The armor is Skin of the Viper Magi. The jewel in this armor is used to help us get to max block and to pump up our mana just a little bit. Onto the inventory, probably in this character where I spent most of my resources, but it's still really nothing special. And you might be able to find this stuff for pretty cheap if you look around. But it's basically just filled with max damage AR life charms. You can find grand charms that do +10 to maximum damage. I think it's up to 72 to attack rating. And on grand charms for LLD, it's limited to 25 to life. Either way, you just want to fill your inventory with those types of charms. And if you look around, you should be able to find these for a decent price, either on D2JSP or possibly even through in-game trading. Depending on your matchup, maybe charge isn't as effective against the opponent that you're going up against. Maybe you just want to be a straight hammered in. There is a setup for that in the stash. We would just switch to a 35% Spirit Crystal Sword. Also, to get to the maximum cast breakpoint, I have a rare ring that has 10% faster cast rate. It also has +2 attack rating, minimum damage, and some to mana. There's also a setup for your switch where maybe you don't want to use FOH, maybe that's not as effective against your opponent, but you do want to regenerate mana very quickly. You can always switch out to an Insight on your second hand. This one is an Insight Rune Staff with a level 17 meditation aura. This could easily be a partisan too. Those are pretty decent. And whereas we already put a lot of points into strength, it's actually not much more to just put a couple more points into strength and have a partisan, which does a bit more damage here. And then of course there may be matchups where you do not want to get frozen. Maybe you're relying more heavily on your physical attacks. For those matchups, we have Death's Guard Sash. It's a set belt that gives you cannot be frozen. And the level requirement on that is only level 6. You can sometimes pair that with Death's Glove, and I'll show you the bonuses that you get when you have those two pieces on. With Death's Glove, you get an additional 30% increased attack speed, and with the belt, you get an additional all resistances +15. So those aren't too bad to have on your character either. And finally, for the stash, sometimes you may not need the 15% damage reduced from String of Ears. So in the matchups where the damage reduction and magic damage reduction doesn't really matter that much, I actually have a belt here that has a high boost to life and replenish life along with some resistances. Ideally, it would have faster hit recovery on it. It can go up to 24 on a belt, even in LLD. But it's nice to have something like that in your stash to switch out to in case you don't need the damage reduction from your String of Ears. You might be wondering what I've done with the stat points for this character, so I'll show those off here. This is actually a pretty strength heavy build, mainly because I have to use this Divine Scepter. Putting all of those points into strength doesn't go to a lost cause. The more points you have into strength, the more damage you actually do, especially when you hit someone with a physical attack like charge. We have just enough dexterity for max block when we have Holy Shield active, and the rest of the points went into vitality. A lot of the life that this character has is actually gained through these charms. There's not too much left over to dump into vitality. That's the challenge and the awesomeness to building characters at level 30 or under, is you are more restricted in what you can build, and duels just are super fun. And that's the basic build for my Liberator. Now I'm going to show you some duels that I did with a good friend in the community named Danzeva. Dan's a really cool guy. He not only gave me the scepter that you see on the Switch here, but he also devoted a chunk of his time to help me test it out and show it off to you guys today. I'd like to think I'm special, but it's not the case. Dan actually does this for a lot of people. Dan, you are the highlight of a lot of people's low-level dueling experience in Diablo, so a very, very special thanks to you. So without further ado, I'm gonna jump into those duels and show you what this guy can do. thanks again, Dan, for helping me show off this build. I hope you guys enjoyed the duels. If you did, feel free to leave a like on this video and also subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps me out on the channel. With that said, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll catch you on the next video.